Before we get to today's Magic in the Room episode, I want to tell you about our new online learning opportunities. Now is a great time to explore new ideas, skills, and strategies to forward your personal purpose. Our online courses are designed to be self-paced and cover a wide variety of professional development topics. Check out all the courses at purposeandperformancegroup.com/online learning. Check the show notes for the link and enjoy today's episode of Magic in the Room.
Magic is found in every room where people connect over a shared purpose. In this weekly podcast, Luke, Hannah and Chris explore the role of purpose, courage, mindset and culture in every leader's quest for transformational performance.
Hello and welcome to Magic in the Room. I'm Chris Province.
And I'm Luke Freeman, and today we have special guest John Stewart back again for another episode. Hey John, welcome.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so we wanted to spend today talking about something that's a little hard to define sometimes if you're not like a social scientist, and that's the idea of community. And specifically, are people's need for community changing right now? What's the role of purposeful business in meeting needs for community? Is building community a business strategy? Should it be? And if so, is there some best practice around that? And so, John, I'm excited that you're with us because you're involved in several, I think, purposeful pursuits in business and value community as well. I mean, give us a quick rundown. How do you see community playing a role in some of the organizations that you're a part of?
Yeah, that's a great question because it's kind of what I live for. You know, we started the business 22 years ago, but it wasn't until 11 years ago that this question came up. And I know a lot of people have heard it and seen it, but what's the why of your business? Why does it exist? And I went home that night and I wrote down, I pulled all these books together, had a Bible and a bunch of other books that I've loved over the leadership books, books about businesses and we go, why do I do this every day? What's the purpose? And wrote down that, and we actually now have it, it's plastered on our wall in the office, but that means absolutely nothing. But one of the things on there is that the Encompass team, we get involved in the communities where we live and where we work. And what does involved mean? It means pouring ourselves into those communities. And over the years, since we've done that, since we adopted that, and the culture changed so that we all are kind of on that same page. This is what this business is about. And there's nothing wrong with generating wealth for the owners of businesses, but that's not what our why is. Our why is using all those resources that are made available to us because we work and we have a business to be able to pour into those communities and true servant leadership in that direction in the communities where we work and live.
So was it now kind of share with everyone like how your business works? So when Encompass generates profit, what happens to that profit?
Yeah, so what we did years ago, we made a decision that 50% of our profits would go back into those communities where we live and work, meaning our team members, if they see a need, they take their credit card and use that to meet that need. If we are supporting a larger organization, we make a decision to do that with a number of people, not just me. I love being able to share that. And then the other 50% goes back into the company to either support the next thing that we're doing or build, the company, build our team. It really goes back.
So, your enterprise model is really this idea of, hey, let's work hard, let's do great work, because that's what creates resource to further develop our communities.
Absolutely. And in the meantime, too, we call our clients partners. So we have great partners that we get to, some of our partners have become my great friends. And that, it's not about developing, I don't want to just go out and develop friendships, but one of our whys is to have extraordinary relationships, meaning it's more than just a business transaction. We really care about those folks that we get to work with, whether it's somebody like a Caesars or it's a small company with 2 casinos. We really, and that one of those guys happens to be a really good friend of mine that has the 2 casinos. So.
Yeah, and the last thing it seems to be about is how we stack the brick and connect the wood.
Yeah, well, we have to know, we have to have expertise in that area. And I think that's the more expertise we have, the better we serve. So, or the team that we build with expertise, the better we serve them. So that is part of it. Definitely, we can't, we can't not know how the bricks get laid, but
those are table stakes.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, table stakes is we know how to design a building.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the work is really around how do we connect with the people that need our building to work for them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So as we dig into this idea of community, I want to put a statement out there, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it's a feeling that I have been getting for a while now, maybe a decade. And get you all's take on it. And it's that as local communities and communities of faith have weakened, specifically in the U.S. over the last 40 years, and I think there's some pretty solid numbers that show that, whether that's through the urbanization of America, moving from small town to a city, where ironically sometimes community is harder to happen, or whether it's the decline in weekly churchgoers or whatever. I feel like the expectation from employees, and not intentionally, but I feel like there's an expectation that the workplace provide community that didn't exist in previous generations. So, true, not true? What's your take?
I'll jump in first. I think it's we went from industrialist grit creating product, and it drove the economy. It was the heartbeat of America. We did these things and we made these great products and we sold them to the world. And there was a story to that. And then one day we started talking about this metric and what's our efficiency and how do we control cost and how do we do this and how do we do that, and everything can now be managed. And I think, you had such a powerful story of the American worker, then you add this manipulation that everything could be managed, and it could be managed to be more profitable, and the shareholders could get more money and the owner could get more money. And I feel like that washed a lot of the story out of it. And then it only became worse. Then we layer on, I'm not saying like I love MBAs, don't get offended, but the way that we have MBA'd enterprise sterilized the existence of those organizations. And it's going to create some backlash or some snapback to we want to get back to a storied existence. Something meaningful where everything I do doesn't need managed. Just let me do work that's meaningful and let's all reap the rewards. And if I'm willing to be part of this organization, I'm willing to give the difference between the value of my labor and what it produces for this product or service to you, senior leader, to you, shareholder. I'm giving you value. That's why this enterprise exists. You are not giving me a job. And that is the turn. And that's kind of where I feel like we sit today.
That's interesting. So my narrative was kind of, as one bucket emptied around where people found community, that the need in this other bucket keeps piling up. You're saying, when you look at it, it's more a little bit of a pendulum. So people had some community and shared purpose, and it got sterilized over the scientification of business.
Mm-hmm.
And now the pendulum is swinging back to be less sterile and more around shared purpose and community in what we do day in and day out. John, what's your take?
Yeah, I think, I see it in our own business. And, we had obviously ups and downs. And over the 22 years in business, you get to see ups and downs. And in those downs, I've probably seen even more that the folks with the team members that are with us even today value that what the business is about a lot more than even the work that they get to do. Work is a little bit slow. We don't, everybody's not as busy. Or you truly feel like you're contributing. And when we're, this deep in work, do you feel the same way? And that balance. And I think that I really have seen the shift that, Chris, you were talking about. Definitely have seen that. Even when I started in the business, we had a drafting room and we had to be there at 8:00, not 8:02, at 8:00. And we worked until 5:00 or later. Mm-hmm. And it was a machine. It was a drafting machine. And then as the years have gone by, I can't imagine asking my team members to be, I can imagine asking them to be at a meeting at 8 a.m. or 6:30 a.m., but not saying, okay, we're going to clock in. And I think there's been a big shift to say, you know what, there's a balance there. And our team members really appreciate that. And I look at other businesses where there's not that same balance. And I'm not saying we're right and they're wrong. I'm just saying that's what seems to work really well. And I think that I get the feeling, and through surveys and things, that our team members are pretty happy at work.
Well, yeah. and that's why if I'm serving that purpose of, building community, if I'm at Encompass, for instance, like even on days we don't make money, yeah, I can still fulfill my obligation. I can still contribute. Yeah. When, if your focus on the business is about making money, guess what? There's days you don't make money. Yeah. And then what? Yeah. You didn't accomplish anything that day? Yeah. It's not good enough.
I'll tell you a quick story. So we had a gentleman that worked with us, and he called me. For some reason, team members called me at 10:30 on Friday night, on Monday night, this one was. So on Monday night, we have our team member meetings at Monday morning, a weekly. And we have a little section we call the why stories. It's just what happened to you, what experience you had this week that talks about the why of our business. Why, what did you get to do? What did somebody else do for you? So he texts me at 10:30 and he goes, I didn't have a why story this morning, but I got one now. And I said, okay, you want to tell me about it? I said, well, can you call me? And, the suspense is there. So he calls and said, hey, I left work today. I went by the pharmacy, picked up a prescription. And as I was coming back out, and he had an Encompass truck, and as I was coming back out, I noticed that there was a guy standing beside my truck. And he said he was standing there like he knew me or maybe knew of the company. But I got up to him, I didn't know him, and he gave me that story about, hey, we were driving through, we're on our way to New York, we broke down, cars at the shop, just wondered if maybe you could help. And he said, I was always leery about that. And he said, well, where is your family then that you said is? Oh, they're over sitting in front of the hotel. So he drove over there with him. He said, I took the risk and drove over there, and sure enough, there was a family, or a mother and two little children there. One was a baby. And he said, the story sort of sounded, the car was at Big O waiting for a part in the morning. And he said, and then I remembered, what the why of Encompass, what we've been talking about. So I went in the hotel and I used my credit card and I paid for a night for the room and for them. And then he said, I thought about it, and they probably need some food. So I ran over to Walmart and brought them back some food and diapers. And he said, and I didn't pay for all of it on my credit card. I put $20 because I felt guilty. I said, Warren, why did you feel guilty? And he said, well, I used the company's money. I said, did you come to work today? Did you serve as what in your role, and we were able to bill for your time doing what you do. And he said, yeah. And I said, that's the purpose of the company, is for you to be able to do that, to make a difference in somebody's life today. And he goes, I get it. I can't wait to tell this story. So, I mean, it was kind of that, what is, helping understand, or I was helped that day understand that he got it. And that's why he was working there. But he didn't even know that was the story.
Well, but you touch on something there that's absolutely critical, is that you guys create space to tell these stories every week.
Yeah.
And I just, like, for the folks that are out there listening, like, I think it's really important that we hear from someone that has a purpose-centric company. Like, please explain to everyone that Monday meeting, because it is unabashedly about everything you believe, and that's why I love it.
Yeah.
So walk us through that.
Yeah. So we feel the need to get together every week anyway, just to communicate, hey, what's going on. And we talk about work and coming up and challenges, and we have different sections of the meeting, but that we start the meeting with a devotion, which is not mandatory. And then we go into the why story, and we introduce everybody, make sure we know who's on that Zoom call or who's in the office there.
But I don't want to gloss over that idea, is like, we start the meeting with the devotional.
Yeah, we do.
It opens with prayer.
Yeah.
Here is the message. Let's keep this in mind as we go about the week. It's not apologetic. It's optional.
It is, yeah.
But it aligns with what your brand stands for.
It does. Yeah. We've been doing that for a number of years, and it's been one of those things where we have good turnout.
Right.
There are very few people that, unless they're just late.
Right. Yeah. Because it is early.
It is an excuse to be late to the meeting, if you can say, because we can't say no, you have to be there. But it's always been that's been a big part of the turnout, was that devotion time. And we have on staff, we have what we call him our counselor. He is an attorney, but he's also a pastor. So most people think that's an oxymoron, but no, he's a great guy.
No, trust me, he's okay.
Yeah.
He's working for both sides there.
Yeah. Yeah. But he prepares kind of the agenda for the day, and he's on that kind of HR side as well. So he does a great job of putting the agenda together, and just a place for our team to share. And then we get to the what we call why stories. Mm-hmm. And we said, we don't, I don't usually go talk about these stories outside of that circle. Mm-hmm. We said it's a safe place to encourage each other to hear those stories and say, maybe, you know what, I could do that. Warren's story about putting somebody up in a hotel. We had another guy that shared, we have hundreds of these. I love going to work and hearing a guy goes, it's no questions asked about using your credit card. Although he did say, hey, is it okay if I buy a stroller? Well, he was one of the project managers on a job site, and he said, I'd be there, and every day this lady's carrying 2 bags and 2 babies, and she just needed something to put the babies or the bags in. And he said, I asked her, I said, do you need a stroller or something? And she had just moved here from another country, was an immigrant, did not have the money to buy a stroller, and so he went and bought her a stroller. Just the stories about the change in his life when he was able to do that. And if your business exists because you want to be able to not only meet the needs of those in the communities where we live and work, but give others the opportunity to experience the joy of giving through working. They're the ones earning that money. That's not going, it's going there. So they're the ones that have the opportunity to share that. And so we get, it is fun to be able to go to those meetings and hear the why stories and about the communities that are impacted. Yeah, we had one where we were working in Greenville, Mississippi, and there was a house that burned down. And we didn't know the people. We just knew somebody who went to this church there, and they contacted the casino and said, hey, this house burned down. And we said, well, let's help. And our project manager went out and bought them, all their needs, their like household needs while they were staying in a motel there. And just, those little things that they told stories about that for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, that's the workplace is a community.
Yeah.
Whether it was always treated that way or not, the expectations of today's workforce is that they have community in the workplace.
Yeah.
Regardless of how hard the MBA's tried to wash it out, it's going to keep coming back. So, John, I know you work with other business leaders, and how do you kind of coach someone through that process of, and for lack of a better way to say it, you can be the same person on Monday that you are on Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think too, one of our whys is understanding our partners' whys, our clients' whys. Why does that company exist? If it exists to enhance shareholder value, then we need to be there with them, doing that with them. And I think walking alongside those business leaders and understanding not just the why of the business, but their personal why. A lot of big corporations, they don't necessarily mesh, because it's hard a lot of times for a big corporation to say, okay, we're going to go give everybody a credit card and say, just use it however you want.
Doesn't work that way, right?
No.
Yeah.
There's some, legal things to that as well. But I had a guy that was in one of the sessions I was leading about, workplace and community and workplace. And he said, John, I work for this big corporation. You have your own business. I can't do the same things that you can. And I was telling Chris this earlier. I said, Mark, do you have a group that you work with, smaller group? And he said, yeah. I said, and do you know that group? I said, you really know them? He said, well, no, we work together, but, and I don't mean like you go hang out and have a beer. Do you just know about their families? I said, what if you spent like 5 minutes a week just sitting down with somebody at their workstation and just ask them a little bit about themselves? And then you can even ask them, hey, you know what? You don't have to believe this, but I'll pray for you if you have something. And so I saw him a few weeks later, 3 weeks later, and he said, I got to tell you the story. I've been doing that, talking to those, my workmates, and I started taking Post-it notes, and I would write that whatever they said, or if they had a little concern, and I put it up on my workstation. And so they all had to pass my workstation to go to theirs. And they started seeing that I had those things up there. And I was, I saw them every day. And he said, now people are bringing me Post-it notes. And so he was able to impact, even in a big corporation, he was able to impact that group. And I bet you somewhere somebody in that group has shared that with somebody else.
Oh, yeah.
And so how you can do that from anywhere. It's not just we own our own business. So,
yeah. And just to expand our imagination about that a little bit, imagine if the story that you just told was told by a CEO at a all hands or a state of the company address and said, I would encourage all of us to be thinking about the community in our workplace like Mark did. And thank you, Mark, for really making this a better place to work.
Yeah.
Like there's no reason why that message can't exist in a large corporation. And sure, like you can only go so far with legalities and all of that, but there's a lot that could be done that is not done if only people would prioritize it and say, this is just as important a message as the message about the new platform we're rolling out or the new whatever it is that we need to do or the cost reduction initiative that we're having or, whatever. So we are going to pause there for a second. I have a couple more questions for you guys when we come back after our question of the day. I want to know why conferences are so weird right now and what that has to do with community. And I also want to dig more into these best practices that we're sharing around how any company can lean into this need for community. So let's head to the question of the day.
Okay, welcome to today's question of the day. This is our section of the show where we just talk about current events, maybe talk about some resources we're engaging with or should be paying attention to, or maybe just have a little fun. But today, let's talk about something that's important to us. And today's question is, what is a cause or a nonprofit organization that you care deeply about, and why do you care that way? And that's where we're going to jump off. So, thought-provoking, challenging.
This one is really challenging, and it makes me feel squirmy to ask the question, because I'm in the middle of kind of struggling with where I'm supporting and how I'm supporting. And I let a couple kind of recurring donations lapse over the last 5-6 months. And I guess, to make a long story short, for the purposes of this, like, I really started asking myself, what am I supporting that actually makes a difference in the lives of people that need a difference made in them? And that's maybe a weird way to say it, but if I'm giving to I'll just say a church, which has been part of our family's story. Like, we've given to the churches that we've been a part of for a long time. I'm having a hard time right now figuring out if that's the best use of my money, or if I should spend 10% more on my purchases and purchase whenever possible from like a minority owned business to actually get my wealth going to folks that don't have a leg up, versus paying for a building for my kids to do fun stuff in. So I don't have a good answer. I don't think it's a right or wrong. Mm-hmm. I think we all get to choose what we do with our resources. But I'll just say, that's the question made me a little uncomfortable, because I'm on a little bit of a journey right now with that. I will say there are a couple causes that I care deeply about, and I always want to support. One of those is, one of our 3 boys is adopted. And so anytime we're talking about adoption or foster care, we get super passionate. I get really excited because I have seen people personally impacted by that. And that's a very tangible, very linear, there is need. And there's a simple way to meet the need, which is just connect people with families. And it doesn't matter to a lot of a degree. You don't really have to have things together for the story to be better whenever you're giving someone a home than whatever they're in now. So, that's mine.
Yeah. And that's just such a powerful part of your story, Luke. And the way that you and Marla, like, it doesn't show up, I mean, it's a family, and it's powerful to see. And I think that ability to reach out and extend love and care, in that way, it's just powerful, and everyone benefits. It's something awesome to see. So, John, I'm interested in your take on Luke's the first part of his answer, just kind of going through that journey of struggling and saying, hey, we give to the church everywhere we've been. And now I see, like, there's historically disadvantaged business owners and places I can spend locally. And, like, I mean, we have resource, but it's not unlimited. Yeah. So, like, how do you navigate that journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first part of that, do we give to the church, or because the church can then distribute to those in need, or do we make those decisions ourselves? And, we're part of the bigger church. But for me, I've always heard, even growing up, my dad talked about tithing, and that was what you give. And I guess as I've grown in that and looked at, I kind of look at, what do I need? And like we were talking about earlier a little bit, but what do I need? What are my basic needs? And then I'm just going to tell you a really quick story. I don't know. We got
time.
Yeah. But there was this past week, when I wasn't traveling, I went and visited this lady who had some needs, and walked in her house, and she has, if you can call it a house, it's her home. She's lived there 37 years, but has no running water, no toilet, no trash service, no heat other than a kerosene heater, and definitely no electricity. I mean, she has electricity, but no air conditioning other than the broken panes of windows, the 2 windows that are in this part of this house that she's living in. And her older son lives there with her. And I walked in, and just the smell overtakes you, and but I found myself comparing her needs to my needs, and what does she really need? She's lived there like that for 37 years, lived in that poverty. She lives in the same county that I do, and I just looked at it, well, this shouldn't happen. But I think a lot of times we compare what somebody else needs are to our lifestyle. And I've learned that we really need to look at that differently and say, what does that person truly need? And how can I give them what they truly need? Or that organization. And we have what we call the Encompass Wow Foundation, that before we were like giving here, giving there, giving everywhere. We give away 50% of our profit, and the rest of it we invest back in the business. And so we weren't going very deep. So now we kind of wiped out the board and said, if you want to be part of this board, instead of just meeting every month, and voting on something that I found, hey, I'd like to give to this guy. He needs his utility bills paid so he can turn his electricity back on. What's going to have a longer term effect? And so, yes, I believe giving to the church is kind of that basic piece of that. But then beyond that, what else do I give to in the communities where we live and work, and how can we give that opportunity to give to others? Is kind of that. It's a great. Your answer was a great response, because I think a lot of us struggle with that. Mm-hmm. How do we go deeper in that?
Yeah,
make that decision.
How about you, John?
I got way off, and the question was what the cause?
Yeah, what's the cause or nonprofit that you care deeply about?
Yeah, in my life over the past couple of years, I've been exposed more and more. I've gotten outside the bubble that I've lived with or in for the past 58 years, and been exposed to the sex trafficking that goes on, at least in the United States. And once somebody told me that story, you can't unhear some of those things, and you go, no, that didn't really happen in my community. Well, it does. I don't care where you live in the United States, it goes on. It happens. Sex trafficking or slavery in general, that happens, but that sex trafficking is a form of slavery. And then I got involved in an organization called the Samaritan Women and Institute for Shelter Care. And after a year of working with them, has been asked to be on their board. And but just doors and doors have been opened for me to get more involved in that fight against trafficking. And I've got story after story too, of where I've met those that are involved, from a buyer who is my neighbor, who came to my house one day and gave me $100 bill, and I can tell you the rest of the story sometime about that, to those women who are survivors and have met those survivors and the power in their stories. And so for me, in sharing that with the men that I'm around and being able to talk about that and talk about what we can do if we have daughters, if we have sons, what we can do to help prevent that in others' lives, prevent trafficking and look for those signs. So that is a cause that I've been most recently and really, I guess, been impassioned.
Yeah,
about
I mean, you can't unhear the story,
Yeah.
and you speak to your eyes being opened. I mean, I found it really, the story of the father selling the son, offering to you, and you can't unhear the story.
No.
And those are the stories where once you hear, you've got to find a way, anything that can be done to intercede or
Absolutely.
Disrupt that process.
Yeah, the most difficult part about that is that it still happens one at a time. We think we want to conquer that whole thing, and even look back to where do we get? Mm-hmm. But it's still one at a time, and that's what's important. We can't forget that piece. It's that one young lady or one young man at a time that matters.
Yeah. And I mean, I think if I was to summarize, what is the cause that I care about, it's really anything to do with children is they don't have a choice. So when they're in situations, they didn't choose that situation. So whether it's Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Care Center Oklahoma City is an organization that I've talked about before on here. They just do great work. They take children that have been abused and bring them to a safe space and, kind of issue the care in one location. Mm-hmm. So when you have a child that's been abused, they're not taking them to be, the medical examination, then the psychologist, then the police station, then, they bring them to a safe place and allow for all of that care to take place under one roof. Mm. So this child that's been abused isn't drug around, from, space to space to then, just make that whole experience more traumatic.
Yeah.
It's already traumatic enough. So those organizations that, connect with children and hopefully give them an opportunity that they wouldn't have otherwise, those are the things that speak to me. And, looking forward to exploring some more of this conversation during our episode. So,
good stuff.
Yeah. Luke, any thoughts?
Nope.
That's it, huh?
Yeah.
Profound.
Yeah, very profound.
Thank you guys for engaging in a meaningful question of the day. And I think the idea is, as you guys listen to this out there in the podcast world, what are those causes that you care about? What are those organizations that are near and dear to your heart, and how do you connect with them in a meaningful way and identify your contribution and your impact? So,
yeah. And, we do this in part to model, having meaningful conversation with our teams that we're a part of. And there's this idea of sequencing where you go from simple to complex. Most of us are familiar with that type of sequencing, where if you want to learn something, you learn the basics and then you learn a little, the 201 and then 301 course and whatever else. Well, the same goes with our teams and levels of emotional vulnerability and building trust, where we go from simple things like, what was one of the questions of the day was like beer or wine, coffee or tea, yeah. Right? You go from there to, hey, what's a cause that you're passionate about and that you support? Maybe a nonprofit organization or a cause. I mean, that okay, like we've sequenced things, right? There's probably 5 or 10 things in between those two questions if we're really working with our teams to build trust on a deep level.
Sure. These are the types of things we talk about when we understand each other.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Awesome. Well, let's get back to the episode.
All right. And we are back. And today we are talking about community. For whatever reason, the workforce seems to be asking for actual, authentic community. We've talked a little bit about what it is. We've shared some stories. So I want to pull the thread on this idea of technical expertise and the need to master expertise versus the need for community and connectedness. So organizational psychology would say that everyone in any job needs 3 things. They need some level of autonomy where they can make choices for themselves. They need opportunities to master whatever skill they're in. And then they need a level of connectedness and authentic relationship with the people that they work with. That's what science has shown to be important for someone to have meaningful work and to really be engaged in their work. So I have a theory here that conferences are weird right now, as we're, whatever we are, 18, 20 months into this global pandemic, because people are starting to go back to conferences and you're like, sign up for a seminar and you go and it's like, oh, use this AI tool to do whatever. And there's some version of technical things like keep improving, but everyone's not facing technical problems for the most part. They're facing like basic human problems. Like, how do I get enough people to work here? Like our turnover's crazy and I'm feeling totally stressed, and my family is really hard because our lives have been so different for 18 months. And what I really want is just someone to put their arm around me and say, it's going to be okay. And yes, we all rallied together the first 6 months of the pandemic, but then the last year feels like we keep getting to the 10-yard line, and then someone moves the goal line another 10 yards. Then a month later, it's another thing, another project, another problem, another shift in the market. And like, we're just together and we're going to be okay. And so I feel like there's a total mismatch right now in what the market is offering to leaders around technicals versus what leaders are needing, which is more on the connectedness relationship side. So that's my take. What do you guys think?
I'll kind of go and then hand it to John. The idea of mastery, let's pull on that for a moment. If we get compensation off the table and focus on the work, right, good things happen. I think there's a level of technical expertise that we can all reach that at some point, like the additional resource required to become better technically, like it has diminished returns. So you're putting forth 80% of the effort to get 2% better.
Yeah.
Whereas if you reach that level of technical expertise where there's comfort with the people that you're working with, and you deploy resource into developing that relationship and experiencing how you connect with that person, understanding their purpose, John, and focus on those components because you're technically adept. Like, how much more technically adept do I need to be, whether you're an architect or a database marketer? Like, once you're some threshold of technically adept, like, we're good. Now, how do we connect? How do we work together? What are the other things? In B2B type scenarios or leader to leader scenarios, I think technical currency or technical competency as currency works similar to compensation. Once I've reached a certain level, we can just get it off the table and focus on the weird ideas we can have together and the things that we can explore.
Yeah. Well, in my profession too, every day is a new day of exploring, and so I think that's one of the things that our team loves about that is that every project's different. So we're not doing the same thing every day. So that diversity of opportunity. I've heard people say it over and over and over. That's one of the things when we do. We have a thing we call a VIP rally, and we do that at least twice a year with our team. In addition to check-ins, every team member. And one of the things I hear over and over is they love the ability to work on such different types of projects with so many different people. So that desire for community also continues to expand. I don't want to continue, back to the story about Mark, is that team happy because those are the only people that they actually really get to communicate with is that small circle. I don't get tired of my family, some of them every now and then, we need a little, my wife goes, she needs some distance from me, but I think that diversity of opportunity, I think that's what we get a lot of times is being able to meet with, I get a lot of energy from other people, from being out there with other people. Not everybody's like that. So I think you do, if you get the technical competency, even though as an architect, I just had to spend a full day of gaining more competency or at least making sure I retain
table
it.
Stakes.
Yeah.
Table stakes.
Yeah. I think if you take that off the table, there is that what is community and how do we our last statement in the why of Encompass is we are an authentic missional community. And authentic being we are who we are on Sunday or Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. Missional means we're on a mission together, and that mission is that why. But it's also serving, being a servant leader to those around us, and then community is just that. We are a community. We are made up of we're all different, but we all only I can do that job that I was given to do, and so that's what each one of us is essential in that.
Yeah, and Luke, to your point about conferences are weird, man. Guess what? I don't want to buy your widget, so I have more work to do. I really don't need anyone else in my Rolodex, putting pressure on me to buy stuff. I don't even know what the market's going to look like in 6 months. So long story short, I could give a shit less about sitting in another workshop. But guess what? Everyone that I'm friends with, that I've been in this industry with for the last 20 years, they're here. Yeah. And you know what we do after these workshops are over? We put our arms around one another and we talk about how glad we are to see one another, and we connect, whether that's over a game of golf or a cold beer or whatever. You know, they're weird because people don't want to take on the work typically that comes out of a conference.
Yeah.
But they want the connectivity and the community from the people they have known and grown with, you know, within their verticals.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my challenge there is like, can we just take the pretense off the table?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be way more efficient?
Yeah.
Would everyone sign?
Yeah. Sign me up for that plan.
Yeah. Let's try that one.
Yeah. If anyone wants to do that, just email us, and maybe we'll put something together. But
I'll be the first one to sign up for that conference.
Perfect. Well, what you're saying about this idea of technical skill, having diminishing returns on your investment, and then kind of emotional intelligence, emotionally intelligent leadership, authentic relationship, having higher ROI after a certain point in your career. I mean, the science bears that out, right? Even the performance of teams charted against the conflict in the team. You know, you can only have healthy conflict if you have a level of trust and vulnerability with other folks on the team. Once you do that, the science shows that medium levels of conflict are really productive for team performance. And so to truly do anything that is new, to innovate, to be creative, requires some level of relational conflict, which requires some level of community and trust to do. Yeah. So I do think there's a strong scientific backing with what you're saying around, at some point, you probably got to focus less on the X's and O's and more on who are you going on this journey with and what does that look like. So best practice. If we admit that people want community, and especially where our culture, our society is right now, the culture of our workplaces are right now, with people being tired, people having change fatigue, people trying to figure out, how do I do work that's more aligned with my purpose and what I want to do? How do you see organizations rising to that challenge? So we've heard some stories, John, from your business. Anything else you've seen, or Chris, any examples that you're like, these folks have it right? They're starting to pull the thread of real community in the workplace in a way that helps the business and also helps meet the human need of the team members.
Right. And I'll kind of go to clarity of collective conscience, clarity of senior leader thought, like high intention. I think about, it's why, John, thank you so much for sharing your story of like, how do you make your organization authentic? How does it show up as purpose centric? I would, like, as I translate or internalize that story, like, you don't operate in the hollow middle. There's no middle.
Yeah.
Like, it really is about getting clear about what you believe and taking the edge, because what you believe as a leader is not in the middle. It's not for everyone. It's not for people that want to drive shareholder value. That's not wrong.
Right.
There is no wrong or right. Yeah. But every business cannot be for everyone, because if that's the target, you're in this middle where there's no foundation. When you state what you believe, now you have the seed of community. And that is going to be on the edge, and it's going to create market for you. It's going to create a market for customers. It's going to create a market for team members. And it's going to be a really good place for you and other people to exist, because you share the journey together in a way that's aligned. And that stuff down the middle where we're just transacting hours for dollars, like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, let's get out of that space.
Yeah, there. On our website, if you really look and you go way down, you know, buried in the website, there's some wow stories. That's the only comment I ever get about our website. People say it's a nice website, but the comments are about those wow stories. And so there is that. Even though we're different types of businesses, there's some connectedness there with the purpose. I'll tell you another really quick story. we built a hotel tower for the Eastern Shawnee tribe, and Chief Glenna Wallace there stood up and gave a speech at the grand opening of the hotel. And she said, she talked about the magnificent building and everything, and she talked a little bit about the history of the poverty of that tribe, and then talked about her grandfather. And she goes, and the building's beautiful, and the yes, we came in within budget, and we were on schedule, and the job had its ups and downs, but it went really well, and we're really proud of that for our own people. And she said, but I want to tell you just a story, and I'm not going to tell the whole story, but and she started crying, and she said, what was really special about this time, though, and about the Encompass was, and she's in front of everybody, and it's like, I'm like, what's she got to tell now? She said, well, halfway into the project, John called me and just said, what can we do to help out in the community? That's part of, and she said, it's part of their why. And so we did a couple things. And then she said, even more importantly, this is what I'm going to remember about the whole project. She said, during this period, my grandson, who's 5, developed cancer. And she said, John was talking to me. He said, what can we do? She said, I don't know. He has to drive to Kansas, and get treatments. And she said, so you know what they did? They sent their chaplain, and their chaplain came and met with our family and spent time with them and figure out what they needed and some of the things that they needed. And she said, that's what I'll remember. And for me in business, I don't say that because, oh yeah, we're this great company and that's the things we do. But for me in business, those are the things that our community, those are the things that we want. I have torn down buildings that I've designed and built in my years of doing this, but those are the memories that will live on. I think that legacy and that what she said in that meant a lot to our team that was there, because they were part of that whole thing. And I think those kind of things, when you're in business and you can have those stories, and that is what becomes community, at least for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and what I hear there, I just want to pull out some best practices. One is being a soulful leader. I think, John, that's not why you're telling the stories, but I think it's so evident that you deeply believe things.
Yeah.
And, if you're a senior leader who is like, well, I'm not really sure what I deeply believe and like why I'm leading this team every day, like, probably something you should take some time and figure out. And there are clear ways to figure it out. I mean, it's not just like a mystery of the universe. There are people that work with you to help you figure out, like, what is my why?
Yeah.
Why am I showing up every day? And how do I want that to impact the people around me? So that's best practice number 1, is understand your why as a leader. Best practice number 2 is, John, for you and with a smaller business, having that weekly touch point with everyone is critical, but that's completely scalable, right? I mean, a large company can figure out what the right cadence is for them. What's the right town hall or all hands or departmental all hands and team meeting cadence that should be modeled from the top, where real conversations are happening and the opportunity to recognize stories of what's happened out there that aligns with what we believe and who we are and our why. And then the last is just empowering people to do things that matter. Yeah. Hearing stories about people going and buying a stroller, like not everyone can do it just like that, but business leaders are smart people, right? If you went and thought, like, how would I really bet on our why? How would I bet on our core values? How would I bet on our purpose statement? How would I make that really real in the lives of the community that I'm responsible to steward, whether I like it or not? Like, you can come up with some solutions, right? There's some things that we all can do, whether that's just an employer match of charitable contributions of employees, or whether it's something a little bit more granular, a little bit more progressive than that even. So there are solutions out there. I do think that the need for community is human. The need for relatedness is human. In a world where a lot of people are spending a lot more time just with their nuclear families, just at home, not going in and out of the office as much. Man, the Zoom calls that we spend with people, or the days that people do come in, or the days that you go in and connect with those employees that have been out there on the line or in hospitality or whatever it is, day in, day out, like those moments mean a lot more right now. And we should make them human moments and community building moments. This idea of leaders as community stewards, as facilitators of community, I think we're going to keep pulling the thread on it. We're going to keep talking about it. If you have questions, please reach out. We love talking about these things, and everyone's situation is different. But intentionality in any setting goes a long way. So John, thanks so much for being with us today. If someone wants to connect with Encompass, tell us a little bit about what kinds of projects Encompass does, and then how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, we primarily in the hospitality industry, from entertainment, hotels, restaurants, casinos, do design and construction and owners representative work. And so around the United States, we do a lot of work and travel land as well. So definitely a lot of opportunities out there for us to partner with folks. And we can find us on the web at encompass-ddc.com.
Awesome. Thanks. Chris, close us out. What are you chewing on right now after today's episode?
I think, as time goes on and the more lessons I learned, I think it's about being authentic. And when the world says it feels weird to believe that, believe that anyway. And don't be afraid to claim your own space and build the community that you want to be a part of. Whether it's a team or an organization or a neighborhood or a city, like wherever you're at, like please have the courage to believe.
Yeah. All right. Well, if anyone wants to get in touch with us, purposeandperformancegroup.com or on whatever social platform you prefer. And I'll just leave us with this. Think about your family. You wouldn't KPI your kids to success, I don't think. And if you tried, you would at least do it in a very relational way. So let's steward the other communities we're responsible for in the same way, and kind of embrace this idea that to be as successful as we could be and to reach our potential as organizations, we got to recognize we're leading people, and that people need more than the MBAs. And if you're an MBA listening, just apologies for this episode.
We'll make up for it next time.
Yeah. And if you really like pain, just keep listening to other episodes. We'll keep putting you down. Okay. Well, thanks so much, everyone listening. I really appreciate it. We'll see you on the next episode of Magic in the Room.
Magic in the Room is hosted by Chris Province, Hannah Bratteroo and Luke Freeman, and produced by Ben West. Theme music is by Evan Grimm. Title track Fake Love available on Apple Music. And this podcast was recorded at Storycatcher Studio with video and audio editing and production support by Brad O'Hara and Alicia Crum, with inspiration, strategy and technical support by yours truly, Neil Hughes. Magic in the Room is a production of Purpose and Performance Group. You can find us at purposeandperformancegroup.com, and remember, previous episodes are available at magicintheroom.com.